Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you may be joining from. I'm Steve McNichol. I'm the Director of Sales for EMEA within Headspin. And I have the honor of being joined today by Jim Rowland of BT, who's kindly hosting us in our offices. You might see me looking to the right-hand side. That's because that's where Jim is sitting. So apologies if you see me looking over there. I'm just looking to Jim. Jim and I have worked together for about 2.5, 3 years, really looking to understand what Jim's and his colleagues' challenges and needs were, and then working together with them to try and determine what is the art of the possible and how can we collectively meet the challenges that they're facing. So Jim kindly agreed to share insights with us related to his role, the challenges, the solutions that we put in place together, and the benefits realized. So thank you, Jim, in advance for that. Now, throughout the webinar, you have the opportunity to ask questions, and we would certainly encourage you to do that. There is a feature, a button on Zoom on the screen to be able to raise a question. So please do that, raise the questions. We will do our best to answer them either as we're going through the flow or at the end of the session. So we've got a specific bit for Q&A at the end of the session as well to cover those. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Jim to sort of take us through the planned agenda for today and share his life with us over the last sort of 2 to 3 years. So Jim, over to you.
Well, as Steve said, good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are in the world. Hopefully you can hear me fine. My name's Jim Rowland. I work for BT. I've been in engineering for about 40 years and working in telecoms for about 15. What I'm going to do today is, as Steve has already mentioned, is take you through a bit of an overview in terms of what drove us to use Headspin as a partner with us, and how we've developed that relationship and how we've actually implemented Headspin's way of working and products into effectively our day-to-day testing, and then tell you some of the challenges we've put in place or had to address, and how we've addressed those, and then where we've gone over that journey over the last 2 years, and where our vision is for the future. Just going to cover just a brief introduction of myself as well. I joined the telecom industry in 2009, working for T-Mobile. We merged with Orange to become EE within a couple of years of that, and ultimately were bought into BT 5 or 6 years ago. My role in BT and before that in T-Mobile and Everything Everywhere, EE, sorry, has been very much around the testing side of things, particularly quality assurance and test and site reliability engineering. I've seen a lot of change over those 15 years. And as everybody knows, I think we'll jump to the next slide, Steve. Most people in the UK will have heard of BT, probably be a customer of BT, and there's a high chance that you're a customer of EE pre-merger. To give you some figures for those that aren't so aware of BT, we've got about half the population subscribing to BT at the moment, around about 25 million subscribers. We're the largest consumer mobile and fixed broadband communications telecom company in the UK. Our flagship brand is the EE mobile brand. It is consistently #1 network for superfast 5G and 4G suppliers, and we currently reach in excess of 70% of the UK population. It depends how you measure that, because if it's on area, of course, there's some zones which we don't still hit, but pretty much everybody in the UK can get a signal, and also the broadband and the standard sort of BT telephone network. There's two main arms within BT itself. There's a corporate side dealing with broadband and networks and sort of support for the business, the mobiles and the voice and collaboration. And then there's global services that BT also represent around the infrastructure, such as sort of the things like the 999 network, security, and the digital workplace and the support for that as well. My role within BT and the new EE that's been marketed at the moment is very much around the quality assurance function, and I'm particularly involved in the delivery of mobile IT change through the integration test environments. And by that I mean where you've got maybe 7, 8, 9, up to around about 25 or 30 independent systems being joined together by a project or a functional change. I'm responsible for the delivery of that end-to-end testing journey through our test environments, and also making sure that in live, when those components are delivered to live, that those customer experience stories or journeys work equally well. We do that through phase testing. We have a lot of APIs like most normal companies would have. So a lot of API integration, a lot of regression testing, and we are really moving into AI assisted testing over this last year or so. We utilize and are moving towards a release train delivery method. This is where multiple components are delivered at the same time. So you may end up with a change which goes across, let's say, 10 independent systems. But to make the delivery to the customer a real thing, they all need to be delivered in a single chunk on the same night, effectively. We've got the older systems, which are harder to deliver in that way. We call those legacy release trains. We've got our new sort of flagship programs and projects through our new IT release train. And relatively recently, we've started to deliver mobile change through release train mentalities as well. So we set up a testing infrastructure, both in the integration test and the live verification test, to allow that to occur. Responsible for various types of testing teams. So we've got a testing team that just deal with the new IT functions. So if you imagine a company as old as BT or as sort of mature as EE, there's quite a lot of legacy systems that need to be updated. And those legacy systems are updated by a new testing function, which is allowing us to deliver through the release train. The legacy systems are still being implemented, have change implemented on them, and they're working in the background to effectively deliver what customers expect at high quality. So we have legacy system tests and legacy component tests, legacy integration tests going on. We've got a large amount of product knowledge and system knowledge, so responsible for the subject matter experts in those areas. And on top of that, we've got a very strong test community of practice, so that within our division, which is consumer products, we can share that knowledge with our colleagues in both the digital space, the My App and the bt.com space, as well as our colleagues in the network area as well. So it's quite a large function. I've seen a lot of change over the last 15 years with the way components are designed and delivered. It builds on my experience of effectively being an embedded software engineer many moons ago, but I'm very much in the tune of the management. And over the last couple of years, I've really been looking towards a tribe and squad-based delivery model to ensure that we've got the maximum capability for our customers and our business partners. Thank you, Steve. So when we started working with Headspin, we were really trying to address some challenges that we were seeing on a day-to-day nature, as well as sort of a longer time frame, sort of 6 months, 12-month type projects. We had, particularly during our acceptance testing phase or our live verification testing phase, being particularly involved in the mobile IT systems, there was a lot of change that needed to be tested on real devices connected to real networks. And what we saw was quite a large amount of inconsistent results. And that was partly down to the fact that these devices were being shared. So for instance, if somebody was doing a change associated with billing and somebody was doing a change associated with functionality with respect to the features that were associated with a particular price plan, because those two things may modify the same device at the same time, it was very difficult to get dedicated devices specifically to any particular project to get the testing done. So that was one of our sort of major drivers. We also had multiple tools to deliver the live testing. We used Browser Stack, and we used Perfecto plus CATS, which was our in-house tool to enable the test journeys. So we wanted a solution for that, so we have to get down to a minimum number of tools. We also had quite a lot of low-value tasks going on. So the example I've got here is that people physically used to have to unplug SIM cards and put new SIM cards in. But we also had things which were being done in terms of you needed to boot up a telephone to run a journey to prove that you could buy a price plan using the credit card, for instance. And the same thing needed to be done manually to cancel a plan or to get a refund, etc. So a lot of those journeys were very time consuming. And because they needed to be on a UK network, they also had to be conducted in the UK. So although BT have been very proactive in offshoring our testing, some of those test activities we were unable to offshore because we needed the device to be physically connected to the network. We also didn't really have much in the range of performance testing. It either worked or didn't work, and that was our major driver. And we were really a manually driven test organization, particularly in the live verification testing phases. As you'd expect, with all those sorts of challenges building up in the background, we had quite a lot of major bugs and issues post the release, which led to poor customer experience, which in turn leads to poor net promoter scores. So there were serious challenges and a serious impact to our bottom line. So we needed to work with a partner such as Headspin to be able to help us address those challenges. And that, as Steve said, about 3 years ago, we started discussions with Headspin, and I'm pleased to say that those discussions have really led us down a route and a path which has been very mutually beneficial to both of us. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, perfect. Question just came in, Jim, for this was, how do we automate the swapping of SIMs in the mobile devices? So we'll probably talk about that in a minute in the solution, but I don't know if you want to
just hit it on the head. Yeah, so it's great.
Now, and maybe give an indication of sort of how many times you're actually changing those SIMs as well.
Yeah, that's true. So we've got two sorts of price plans in the consumer marketplace. We have pay monthly price plans and pay as you go price plans. They're different physical SIMs, and what we need to do is to effectively get somebody to swap those SIM cards out depending on the types of journeys we need to do. If you imagine like an annual tariff refresh, we've got in excess of, I forget how many price plans it physically is, but it's probably 2,000 price plans or more across pay as you go and pay monthly. And basically, to test that in full, you need to switch out every single SIM and run every single journey. We don't do anything of that sort in terms of testing. It's very much tested at system level automatically. But what we need to do is to do the major plans, major journeys, etc. And that requires a SIM to be swapped. So, everybody stops SIMs. It takes you about 2 minutes to do each one. What we did with Headspin was we worked with got Headspin to recommend a solution to us. And what they had been using historically with other vendors or other customers, I should say, is use a product from Qualigon, which is a SIM swapper. So effectively, you put one SIM card into a telephone, and then you'd have a multiplier. So I think they had 1 to 2 or 1 to 8, 1 to 16. I think they've got 1 to 96 now, is it? Or 90?
And even higher now,
even higher.
To several hundred now.
Yeah. So basically what we'd do is we would insert 100 SIMs into one of these devices, and then you can control which SIM is activated using a browser. So you can integrate that browser to switch between the SIMs automatically. So whether we want to say have a unit, for instance, in California, and we can have one of our EE SIMs running a message or running some testing journeys. We might want to switch that to a competitor SIM, or we might want to compare it, how it performs now on pay monthly as to how it performs pay as you go. So Qualigon was the solution. We found that to work seamlessly with our testing framework, and it means that we can effectively update our SIMs, say, once a month and utilize those SIMs until those test parameters change.
And it's fair to say, Jim, that now you've got that automated as well, so you don't even need to go to the browser. It's just automated.
It's automated within the script, So as part of the testing journey, that focus on automation is where we've really worked well, which I guess is the fifth box. That manual real world scenarios is where we've really moved on. Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Jim, for that one. Thank you for raising that question.
So this slide is something we put together, and it was our drivers for taking on or working with Headspin I guess we had to prove to our financial team that it was going to be worthwhile. And we did that journey around about 2 years ago. What I'm pleased to say is that this is perhaps pretty much the current state of where we're working right now. So although this journey started 2 years ago, over that 2 years, we've got to where we want to be. But as I said on that first slide, we wanted to improve our net promoter scores for our customers. There's a massive focus on reducing the costs through both automation and through offshoring. Any task could be offshored to keep the costs down. One thing that we did find was that as we went out to sort of demonstrate how we were working with Headspin to our colleagues in different areas of the business, what we found was that somebody would come to me and say, hang on, I've got a similar sort of problem where I need to get access to a real device on a real network. And I set up quite a lot of collaboration sessions between our team and the mobile IT test and our guys that are testing the MyE app and the browsers for things like bt.com. So what we found was there's been a massive win in terms of the way we work together within BT, because it does seem to be, at the end of the day, everybody wants to prove their change works on a real phone on a real network. And so it's brought together ways of working and really increased collaboration and team working. The other thing that we've also been allowed us to drive further forward is performance testing alongside functional testing. So by that I mean it isn't just a yes, no, it passes, it fails. This is yes, it's passed, but it may have taken 8 seconds to run the journey, whereas our spec is 6 seconds to run the journey. So it gives us that further insight, which we didn't really have before. It was all done empirically with the flavour and the feel that the manual tester would have had from the user experience. And because it's given us this massive push towards automation, it's given us that consistency of results and that repeatability, which gives us, so if a test journey fails, we can repeat it again, either automatically or with logic, to make sure that we actually deliver what the customer needs and we really understand the customer experience. And the last thing on my list was there's been a call for senior managers really to explain in a simple way what we're doing. They don't really like a percentage. They don't really like a ton of detail either. But what we've provided with Headspin is self-serve dashboards so that our stakeholders can go in and look either at a very high level to see red, green, has the journey worked okay, but they can then deep dive themselves to the lower layers to really understand what's going on. And that's our journey over the last 2 years. That was our desired to be state a couple of years back. We've delivered all of that now together with Headspin. And I guess what that's really let us do is it's let us concentrate on different things. So we've now got solutions where we're looking at different geographies, being a sort of international player and also, the Wi-Fi and the 5G networks are working all around the world. We need to be able to prove that very easily. So we've set up a number of roaming, as we call it, destinations throughout the world to allow us to control telephones in remote locations as if we're sat in front of them. We've also really concentrated on that whole delivery journey, which goes from integration test through live verification testing and into that sort of first 24 to 48 hours after delivery. And that site reliability engineering approach, looking at the performance, looking at the impact of those changes on how we were working. Has it got better? Has it got worse? Does it flag up an issue with capacity? Those sorts of things. It's really helped us cement that and get that in place. And it's also given us a framework and driven us as a company to use the same methods for testing and build on the same way of working. We've got bespoke systems. We've got mainly Selenium-based product, but we've got sort of Flutter things in WebDriver IO as well. Yep. So it's all coming together as a single solution. And those orange boxes are those sort of nice to haves that it's really just coming out of that journey. So things like use of artificial intelligence to capture defects and help assign them to the right place. Things like an open solution, so we can see exactly what Headspin are doing. It's nice and clear, it's nice and open, it's highly secure, it's highly usable in terms of if I want device A, which is located in the UK, I can book that. If I want device B located in the US, I can book that. I can run a journey between the two manually. I can run a whole suite of tests or pick tests and run those automatically as well. The other thing that's probably worth mentioning, Steve, is things like the 0-hour support. It's been really essential so that we deliver, what my stakeholders want. And sometimes things do go wrong, and that's when we pick the phone up and we speak to Steve and his colleagues in Headspin to be able to get us the information we need to help us drive forward either a problem that we've got, or most of the time it's been, we've got this idea, are we able to support this, or can we do it this way? And when we need a little bit of guidance to get us going, and then it moves us further forward. Most recent example of that is some help from the technical team at Headspin to automate our roaming testing. And we've had a number of hours of work, I guess, your guys did for us.
Yep.
They set up the automation test journeys based on what sort of tests we were doing. And it's like a starter for 10. It gives us that ability to then say, okay, I understand how that works now. I've got that sort of base framework or base structure in place. We can use our test engineers to now go away and write the scripts for everything that we need to do.
Yeah.
I think, yep.
Yeah, awesome.
Exciting.
Yeah. I'll put mine off. If you could use on mute now.
Okay, just switch over mics.
Yep, and speakers. Cool. Yep, okay. It's great being in the same room, but sometimes you just have to mute and play with the speakers a bit so we don't get that wonderful echo. But I think, Jim, you hit a nail on the head there. It's very much about working closely together and collaborating together. And, you really understand your challenges inside out. We understand the technology and what that can do. And it's really a case of being brainstorming together. That's what makes the relationship really challenging, but very rewarding and fun as well, on that side of things. And so far we've managed to, meet all the needs that you've given us. You keep giving us challenges, but so far we're able to hit them as well. But what I wanted to do is just over the next couple of minutes, just based on what Jim shared, is basically just talk about how Jim's vision of what they needed aligned with what Headspin's vision was as well, in terms of the key capabilities that we bring to the market that we also see other operators needing as well. So maybe different levels and different parts of their journey. But I think whenever we started talking 2.5, 3 years ago, what was apparent was that, you wanted to go beyond the functional testing. It was critical. Experience was critical to really understand, if that net promoter score is not good, why is it not good? Can we understand the user's experience internally, from our side, but from the customer's perspective. So that was really important on that side. Gaining that end-to-end visibility you talked about as well, through those end-to-end journeys and the different infrastructures that they're going through, that connects you and the server end from the customer and the consumer end as well. And being able to see the different components in that journey and identify, what may be causing the issue in that journey. I think another aspect that you mentioned as well was really, the fact that we're looking at the end-to-end journeys, the fact that we're collecting this rich set of data can sometimes bury you in data. So how can we have those dashboards that intelligently, making use of artificial intelligence, but the dashboards that intelligently roll that information up so that the different levels, whether it's at the engineering level, the management level, the executive level, they get to see the information that's really important to them. So that A, they can get a grips with an understanding where things are, and B, when you need their help and assistance to move barriers, that you can be talking in the same language and they can self-serve. So that ability to basically get the experience, look across the different data sets and be able to have those enriched multi-dimensional and multi-level dashboards was really critical. And then I think other aspects as well related to, having an indication in the performance aspects as well, critical from that non-functional side, but also from the convergence as well. BT, like a lot of organizations, can work in a very siloed structure, people looking at various things. But when you start to look end-to-end journeys, you start to break those silos down. So you're collecting the data from all the different areas. And, we see other people as well, like yourselves, looking to bring that data together. But then obviously sitting in QA, you can identify where there's an issue, but you're not the person to fix it. So being able to triage that quickly and then send a complete package set of information to the recipient with all the logs and everything, that says, there's an issue in here. Here's all the information you need to basically analyze it further and fix it. So I think those capabilities and our vision around the experience side, the performance side, and the convergence side of data and people, I think really aligned nicely with your vision as well, and the challenges you had, which I think is why it was a sort of a marriage made in heaven.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't need to move 1,000,000 miles to get to where you wanted to be. You know, we were virtually already there, which was great. And you mentioned that, you know, really it's about bringing that art of the possible, you know, the ideas that you have, what's the art of the possible with the capabilities you have now that's evolving quickly to really intuitively and really innovate with innovation as well, give you a solution that's going to take you forwards. So I think that was really, you know, A, exciting from our side, and B, beneficial potentially from your side as well. Absolutely. It's a win-win situation. So just quickly, for those that don't know, you know, what's the sort of solution that Headspin has that, you know, BT were able to take advantage of? Well, you know, you've got your manual and automated testing on the side here that you were already doing, and you already had your automated scripts to be able to do that. And basically what Headspin provided was this device infrastructure that's global in nature. But the difference being that as part of the physical devices being able to run those tests, I think the aspects that were really important to BT was the richness of the data that it collects when it's doing those tests as well. You know, what's happening on the device, all the device metrics, the UX metrics, the packets, the code that's being executed as you're going through those series of tests. And again, the analytics that you mentioned before, critical for BT, is not just swamping you in data, but using advanced analytics to sift through that data and identify automatically where there are issues that are going to impact that user experience. And then, as you rightly said, and you many times, it's great, Steve, but, you know, I want you to surface them, but I want you to also, you know, push them in a direction automatically for us as well. Create the tickets automatically so we know that they're accurate, we know they're complete, and we know they're adding value to the recipient so that they can quickly drive this out of the business as well. So this is what we, you know, what the Headspin solution is based upon. And again, the nice thing as well, it supports, you know, virtually every mobile device that's out there today. It supports the media devices as well, you know, your Roku, Android TV, Apple TV, smart TVs, and the range of browsers as well. So it is, to a certain extent, a one-size-fits-all capability as well. So, you know, I know you understand all that. I hope that's useful for people on the webinar as well. It just gives you some insights into what the Headspin platform is. But then I'll hand back to Jim to talk about then what was deployed in BT, how they use it, and what are the sort of areas of application benefits you're getting from it.
Yep. Okay.
So I'll now go on mute if I can find the mute button again.
Perfect. Right, it should be live again, which is good. Okay. So I guess, yeah, building on from what Steve said there about that collaboration, asking for, you know, what can the Headspin products do? That led us down a journey of doing some proof of concepts because, you know, as with most organisations, we needed to convince the senior directors, etc., that this was the right thing to do to change effectively supplier of our automated solution. So we did around about 4 or 5 proof of concepts over a period of probably about 6 months, to be honest, where we tapped into the technical knowledge, technical expertise that Steve's technical wizards had, and really understood the capabilities. And I guess there's sort of 4 main blocks of sort of product that we interface with or utilize. If I start with the bottom left-hand corner, this thing called a P-box. This is a unit which I must admit I haven't physically seen one yet, apart from in photographs, but it's about 18 inches square, so about, what's that, 45 centimeters by about 75 centimeters long. It's a cuboid in shape. And within that, it holds 28 mobile devices. 24 mobile devices. It's got effectively 3 PCs in there, and it's got connectivity to the outside world via, you know, network cable. And within that box, we've got around about, well, in total, it's about 30-ish devices dotted around the world. So we've got some in a basically which are sort of cloud devices held in the data center in London. 50 is it? Yeah. So it's gone up. We've got 3 or 4 strategic global locations with another P-box where we have got a couple of slots in each one to give us footprint in those various countries. And there are plans to put more P-boxes in place. This is really the guts of sort of the physical side of the testing that we do. So these are real devices with real SIM cards, and they are attached to sort of the real network either in London or in these global positions around the world. We also got the Qualigon SIM switches, which is the unit in the middle, which gives us the ability to switch out those 60-ish devices to many, many more SIM cards. So as we require to do that, it gives us a lot more options in terms of how we can test. And we also have both of those under the control of the Headspin remote UI user interface. That can be used through a simple browser from anywhere in the world, and it gives us real-time control of the telephone as if you sat in front of it. The beauty of the PBox solution is, although that time difference between when I, on my browser in the UK, type something in and hit go, all the data and all the metrics are gathered from the PBox itself, attached to the device itself. So you get real-world data across Android and iOS, which is absolutely essential whilst we're doing our app and browser testing. The last thing on that little line across the bottom is we also purchased the analytics function, which allows us to look at those devices and extract the data in terms of when things fire up, when they finish, the quality of the audio, lots and lots of different parameters we're able to do. And one of the things that I found working with Steve is really good is that we've got the ability to change how we configure those boxes and how much we've got in place. It's very malleable in terms of meeting our needs. As our needs have grown, it's very easy, for instance, to add audio modules or video modules or solutions that allow us to plug our own devices into a laptop. And that transformation, those sort of notes on the right-hand side, are effectively the guts of where we really have seen advantage. So it gives us the control of those real devices. You just get an image of the device on the screen. It looks and behaves exactly as if you were in front of the device, with the ability to switch off Wi-Fi, switch off the 5G network, to switch the whole machine off and back on again, to switch the SIM card, to look at the screen, to take pictures if needs be, to use it to scan a QR code, lots and lots of different things you can do. With the audio functionality added as well, it gives us the ability to do our IVR testing, not only on just yes, no, was there a message, but to increase the functionality there to ensure that the right message was utilized and that the quality of that message of the audio file itself was good enough. And if, for instance, it wasn't good enough, it would capture that and put it into the log. It gives us the ability to download either live apps and do testing on it, or development apps and do testing on that as well. We've built up a huge regression suite, and that gives us the ability to repeat that regression suite, say in the States or in the UK or in Brazil or other geographic locations. And it gives us that hands-off automation testing, which we've been really looking for, which increases our offshoring ability, but just makes things more consistent and very much machine-led rather than person-led. Another real good feature we found through the user interface is the ability to share devices and pre-book devices. So with a testing organisation the size that BT is, what we found is that there are dead times in testing where we don't need the devices to be dedicated just to ourselves. So we can offer those to our colleagues in other areas of the business to utilise those devices, and we've got usage stats you can pull out from the analytics as well, in terms of, well, this Android device is only used 30% of the time, or this iOS device has always got a queue associated with it, and therefore if we doubled up on the iOSs and lost an Android, it would give us more flexibility. So all those sorts of things are built into the solution from Headspin, which are those sort of nice to haves. It does everything it says it does on the tin, plus it gives us these additional sort of little tick boxes that make our life a little bit easier, and to be brutally honest, keep the overall costs down.
It's nice to have all the features, but you got to keep the cost down.
Yeah, absolutely. You mix and match, which I think is one of the major messages there.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
So this one is probably a bit of a joint slide. This is some of the sample screens that Steve and I put together as a result of our testing. So the one on the top left is basically an end-to-end journey that a customer would do. It may be to, I don't know, purchase a new price plan or purchase an add-on to a price plan. And what you can do is you set sort of breakpoints at different points during that journey, and the Headspin system will time between there. And if something falls outside of targeted parameters, it will flag it up red. And there's a dashboard. It's a great tool at a sort of testing level to see what's passed and what's failing. So here we've got a journey which is, I don't know, about 7 different component blocks it's going through. The second and third to last are clearly outside limit. The journey itself has passed, but it'll be something to look at. Now, it could be that, you know, there was a glitch on the network, or you know, something happened on the device itself at that point. So what normally expect is that test to be repeated and see if the results were the same, and then if there's a problem or not. You've got the specific within the analytics ability to drill down into the core issues for both the APIs we're running, but if it's third-party APIs being called, it can also gather data on that as well. And then ultimately, when you're beginning to target into what the problem is, you can really go in and look at effectively almost like a recording of what was happening on the device in real time, and move your cursor along that trace to find out when was the little cursor spinning round on the screen. You know, what was it doing in the background, what potentially caused it, and make a judgment call on whether it was customer impacting or not. I think there's one more quarter comes up there, isn't there, as well? Yeah, and then basically the other ability is to do comparisons. So you can compare, for instance, a journey on a telephone based in the US to a phone, same journey on a phone in the UK. You could do it with 2 phones in the UK on 2 different networks, or you could do, you know, the same test journey 10 times to look for consistencies or inconsistencies of results. And all of those things are sort of built into the analytics package that we found particularly useful to help drive us down that journey of understanding the performance of our apps and of our sort of base devices and our mobile IT systems in the background. Another big buzzword at the moment is sort of like to try to use AI as best we can in testing. And this is something where we're working with Headspin at the moment to, once it's found an error, is to not only capture the logs, which it does anyway, but to assign those logs or capture those logs and put them into a Jira ticket, one of our defect management systems. So the bottom right here, you can see it's grabbed a video of the actual testing journey. It's grabbed a couple of analytics in terms of you know, the actual sort of data that's flowing from one point to another point, stored that in the ticket, raised the ticket itself within Jira, and then it can automatically triage and assign it out to the design and development team to take it away and get it fixed. That's an area that we are growing at the moment within BT. And we're finding it's got a couple of benefits. It gives us that consistency and that immediacy of, there's the issue, there's the defects that's been raised. Historically, you know, you look at it, somebody to look at, say, 100 test journeys as part of a regression suite, and going down and independently raising each one and assign it to a team, capturing the logs and putting it all together. And that really is dead time. You're not using the tester's abilities to test and understand what's going on. You're basically getting the tester to do admin. And what this Headspin solution, or particular part of the Headspin solution, does is give us that automatically, and it leaves our testers to concentrate on what they're good at.
Perfect.
Okay.
Awesome.
Steve, yep.
Thank you, Jim. I know we can keep going on and going on and going on and going on and going on, but just what's your thoughts in terms of, you know, some of the areas you're looking at in the future?
Yeah, so some areas in the future. I mean, we want to aim to get a P box here in the UK in one of our core sites,
in your labs,
in one of the labs. Yeah. The reason for that really is that we've had so many requests from my colleagues within BT itself, both from the network side or from the smart hub testing side, and from various programs and projects with specific needs, that it's felt that if we had a box here in Birmingham, we'd be able to be even more reactive than we are at the moment. We like the idea of having devices in the cloud, so there's no intention that this would replace what's in the cloud, but use the cloud-based products to do our regression testing, for instance, where we need that high level of consistency, which means that someone doesn't come in and unplug it, for instance, if it's in the office itself. We're continually looking at automation, more and more automation, and more intelligence with AI, particularly around defect capture and defect triaging. And we've got quite a long way to go on that for our legacy and mobile IT journeys. We've got it in place for that new IT infrastructure because, of course, we built it in from scratch. But one of the other interesting things is that, you know, we've done a few in-house demonstrations of what we've done with Headspin over the last couple of years, and it's really generated a bit of buzz around the office. So we've got my colleagues in the network testing space. They're very interested in looking at particularly roaming solutions and competitor performance, and they see this as another potential way forward to both reduce costs but keep that consistency and get that additional value of analytics built in, AI built in. We're looking at doing some remote hub testing as well, again allowing us to offshore, cut the costs. That always wins friends and favours with the finance teams. But it's also that, like I say, that additional layer of the other things that it brings to the table. And we're investigating further SIM switches because, again, what we're trying to do is to enable as much of our testing footprint as we can through the sort of the one Headspin solution. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, lots of good stuff for the future.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's not including what your digital colleagues are doing as well.
Yeah, so I don't really speak for my digital colleagues here, which are dominating the MyE app and the bt.com website testing. So I think I read something recently, something like 1,700 web pages have been decommissioned and something like 750 odd have been replaced. So all the testing of that on all the browsers could be catered for through Headspin. So we're looking at that as a solution as well.
Yeah, awesome. No, thank you, Jim, for that. Thank you, Jim. That's really appreciated. Okay, so that was great. You know, thank you very much, and very enlightening and insightful. Bearing in mind the sensitivities of the business as well, and what you can and what you can't share. We've got a few questions came in on that one. One of the questions was how easy was it to migrate your scripts from your I presume they mean automation scripts from your previous platforms to the new platform?
That's a great question. That was one of our major concerns as well. I guess there's two things we did. One was we went to Headspin and say, look, you know, we've got all this work, all our automation scripts are in either Selenium or we're in Perfecto, and we worked with the support team to understand what we would need to do, and we were pleasantly surprised to find that it was literally things like just change the header, and it would then work. Like I say, we ran some free proof of concept trials, and we did that for the EE Mobile, the consumer products, i.e. the BT broadband, one or two experiments on the corporate side, and one or two on the digital side as well. And what we did was we had, I think it was around about 20 test journeys per product type, and we basically tested things like in my space, we did 17 test journeys. We tested IVR, text servicing, QR code recognition, and barcode scanning, and the MyE app itself. And what we did was we basically wrote those scripts, not necessarily the whole pack, but just one or two test journeys from each one. And I'm not saying we did it without any help, because we did utilize your guys quite a lot to help us do those initial messages and additional changes. But we did find it fairly painless, and very quickly we got a pack together, which we could then go back to, in my case, the finance team, to say, look, we have this solution. Not only does it do exactly what we're doing at the moment, but there was a cost advantage. And more importantly for me, it had a growth advantage in terms of what other things you could bring to the table. And it gave us that control of the product ourselves, rather than have to go through a third party.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Another question here came in. This is an interesting one for you. What would you define as a North Star metric defining the performance of your team, both pre and post release?
So we've got a lot of metrics that we gather, a lot of KPIs that we're particularly interested in. I guess depending on who you talk to. So won't beat about the bush. We came to Headspin looking to save money initially.
Mhm.
It was an alternative. I think there was one of my colleagues had sort of seen something and thought, actually, we ought to do due diligence here and do a comparison of costs. And I think what we did was we found that cost drove it. It was worth doing those experiments and drive things forward and understand a bit more. So the first one was bottom line cost. The second was the features that it delivered.
Mhm.
But we've got all the standard sort of testing KPIs that we'd want to see. So things like mean time to resolve a defect, mean time to identify a defect, for instance.
Mhm.
And you look at the baseline you've got for manual test
Yeah.
journeys. I mean, even that was another one. The ability and efficiency of
Mm.
writing a test journey and running a test journey.
Yep.
And we were comparing manual with automated particularly. And so it very clearly, it's quite quickly to see from terms of metrics what the difference is.
Yep. And do you have specific team metrics as well? When you're talking
Yeah,
about-
very much so. So it's as probably most testers would understand, it's those standard, you want the code to go out defect free. So it's the number of defects that we would identify, particularly in the real testing and that production testing. You know, this is the last stop cafe before it goes into the customer's hands. So we really, if we miss something here, it's really important because the customer will see it. And in telecoms, you're looking at net promoter scores particularly, but also Ofcom fines, and you know, we don't want to give our customers a bad service. So yeah, there's probably 7 or 8 that we would concentrate on, but there's probably 40 or 50 that are sitting there in the background metrics.
Okay, got you. I imagine if anybody's particularly interested, they could contact you and
absolutely
share the details specifically. Another interesting one here, I've heard this many times as well. And I know you're looking into things like Gen AI and what have you, but what role would you see AI playing in improving flaky tests?
So flaky, that's a great question. I guess if they're automated and you can repeat those test journeys, then Headspin's analytics help us identify where things are on the limit. So, you know, we've got 30 million customers using our mobile products, and we want to make sure that there are no defects in there. But if there's something which is marginal, we would like to have the ability to, you know, repeatedly test something and see that it's getting marginal. So if we put a functional change in and some of those parameters, which should be all green on a customer journey going across 7 building blocks, if a couple start going yellow because of a change we put in, we should see that. And we can then start to identify it. If everything is always green because you've got like 10 seconds for each stage, then what we can start doing is winding those parameters down so we start seeing defects, and then start seeing performance issues, or things going from green to amber to red, and then say, okay, that's our baseline. If we do future changes, what we're hoping is that baseline get faster, but if it doesn't and goes the other way, we can see it nice and quickly. And that's where the analytics helps us, and that repeatability and consistency of results and testing really help us through.
So I think that's answering the question. I think one question, one interpretation of that question, I think, which is how is RAI identifying the KPIs for you that you're then able to use? You're able to change some of the parameters, see how those KPIs change, and identify the sensitivity to those particular parameters. I think another interpretation of the question is, how can you use AI to basically analyze the tests that you're doing and identify within that where there may be flaky tests, or indeed taking it a step further, tests that are, you know, unnecessary because you're testing the same thing 25 times from 7 different departments. I
think that's a great way of putting it. So if it would help us identify the most important test journeys to utilize. We also use Conform IQ at the front end, where we capture the testing flows we want to do based on the design changes. And that will also give us some historical metrics to deal with, to understand where we're likely to get issues in the future based on certain types of functional change. With all of our systems, you know, some are more unstable than others for various reasons. And if it's instability that you're looking at here, again, it's the ease of being able to repeat a test case to see if it passes on the second time. Was it the 1 out of 100 cases that we were actually running that it failed, or does it actually fail 99% of the time and we've got to do something about it?
Which is where the analytics comes in.
Where the
because if you're
analytics
running
really
those
comes in.
tests, hundreds or thousands of times, you're not going to go through it manually. You're going to want the analytics
Yeah,
to go
just
through and
tell
pull
them.
out those
Yeah,
insights for
absolutely.
you, which is where we have the analytics. So I'm not saying we've got all the answers. We certainly don't.
It's a bit of a pointer.
Yeah,
more.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a pointer, and I know there's a number of experiments you're doing on those as well with the different AI platforms to look at how you can sort of improve the success and the coverage and the stability of the tests at the front
Absolutely.
end as well. Okay.
And to be brutally honest, it's an interesting area to work in as well.
Yeah.
So you're not just doing running of test journeys and thinking about, is it a pass, is it a fail?
Yeah.
But it's moving us into that performance, looking at things from a customer's viewpoint and being able to generate stats to put forward a message or to put forward the fact that there is no instability.
Yes.
So it's got that positive spin to it as well.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So I'm just conscious of time as well, Jim, on that side of things. I think there are another couple of questions. One question: how important was it to you to have real devices as opposed to simulators?
Yeah, it's a good question. So one of the problems we found with simulators is, particularly to browser testing, is that it doesn't give the true customer experience, whereas testing on a real device with different size screens, with different speeds, it really gives you the real and true customer experience. And what we found was that when you've got a limited range of devices which you've got to manually handle, you don't get those statistics. You get the pass fails, but you don't get, it was 7 seconds, not 9 seconds to get a response to me pressing the button.
Yeah.
What you get when you automate and you use these Headspin solutions is you get that analytics. So you really can see what's going on.
And you get it at the handset level. So it's not just the server metrics you're getting, it's the actual consumer metrics that you're getting as well, the consumer experience.
It is, yeah. And if, my app, for instance, and you click the go button and it waits 8 seconds before it then responds with a text, you can measure that. Yeah. Whereas if you do it manually, you just get a flavour that, well, that took a long time, but you don't know if the change you put in is now half a second better or half a second worse.
Yeah.
So I do think it does really help understand that situation.
Yeah. And are there key, one of the questions, are there key non-functional performance metrics that are helping you most?
Yeah, so I guess because you can capture such a lot, the first part of our journey has been, can we remote access these devices, which allows us to offshore and save money? So that was our first premise when we came in 2 years ago. Then you're looking at effectively, how do you utilize that to the next phase? Effectively, so just get the question again. So this is non-functional testing to help us. Yeah. And what it does is it gives us the ability to see that non-functional performance, visualize it. It's that
in the context of the user journey.
In the user journey's eyes, very much so. Remember, this is production testing. So rather than looking at system testing or component testing, which can be your boundary conditions, your huge data sets all done manually, done automatically, or even the integration journeys where you're just making sure that is that message or that journey goes through 6 or 7 systems, it doesn't break. What you're looking at in the live real world scenario is, what does it feel like to a customer when he buys a telephone using our MyE app, or if he wants to add in a TV option? Is it taking him 10 seconds? Pleasant experience. Okay. Can he see the screen? Is the button big enough to physically put your finger on? So some of the accessibility testing is another future area which we do need to look at, both from a legal point of view, but from a right thing to do perspective as well.
So you're right, actually. So it's particularly when you're doing that production testing, you want to get that first-hand experience of those key journeys that the user's using all the time, and how is the system responding and performing for him.
Absolutely.
And then be able to run that hundreds of times, so that you're ruling out the outliers. You're really looking at the core.
That's right.
Consistent.
IVR is another great example, because you've got the message, which is say an 8-second long message, and you know that it's made some sound, and that's your sort of like bottom line, your bottom level. But actually, to hear the right message is the next piece, and then to hear it at an acceptable quality is the next level of test that needs to be done. And if you just do 2 or 3 messages manually, it doesn't always give you all information, or like I say, that analytical, statistical input that you need.
The qualitative.
Qualitative.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Jim, thank you very much. We've run up to the end of the time. It's good timing. So that's great. So thank you for that. Thank you for everyone who's attended and listened through. Thank you for the questions that were raised. They were really helpful. It makes it much more interesting whenever people are actually engaging with you as well. So hopefully everyone that's joined has found it insightful as well. We will be recording it, or we have recorded it, so you will be able to, I'm sure, retrieve it and look at it later. If there's anything in particular you'd want to go through afterwards. And if you have any ongoing questions thereafter, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will do our best to answer these for you as well. So, Jim, thank you again.
Thank you, Steve.
And thank you, everyone, for your time this afternoon, this evening, this morning, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.